I enjoy research very much, and it's great to be able to get into an archive or into the stacks of the library and read and take notes and so forth. But ultimately, the point comes when you have to sit down and put it on paper, and that can be a very difficult task. There's nothing more frightening than the blank page, be it on a computer screen or on a notepad in front of you. But I do find the writing process very rewarding because it is very creative. It does force you to make words say what those big ideas that you've been carrying around in your head for quite some time. Well, I think anyone who wants to be a historian is drawn to writing. It's obviously very interesting to go into archives and to read the original documents and original sources of the period that interests you. But what's kind of the greater compulsion is to write it up in some sort of coherent way so that you can share it with others. And that's where the writing comes in. When I was in college, I enjoyed taking courses in writing fiction, and it's frankly not that big of a stretch to go from writing fiction to writing history, because it's no dirty secret that all historians take the evidence and then weave narratives out of it, and essentially stories that they want to tell. And so that's what I do, and I think the chief difference is that somebody who's writing nonfiction, a historian, is drawn to having that sort of archival base, that you want to work with sources, you want to work with the stuff that really did happen. It absolves your imagination from having to come up with this stuff on your own, but it is still a very imaginative process. Any good history, I think, has a good, a clear beginning, middle, and end. You know, there is some sort of compelling force that drives the plot along. You get to develop characters and have those characters interact with each other. And so, one of my aims as a writer is certainly to write something that other people will enjoy reading. My book is titled Indians and Colonists at the Crossroads of Empire, the Albany Congress of 1754. It is an in-depth study of a very famous intercolonial treaty conference that occurred in Albany, New York, on the eve of the French and Indian War. Its most famous artifact is the famous Join or Die snake cartoon that Benjamin Franklin published in May of 1754. It's often called the first political cartoon in American history. It shows a snake that's been cut up into several different pieces. The different pieces represent the different colonies, and the motto is Join or Die. Franklin published this right on the eve of the outbreak of the French and Indian War, the notion being that the colonists had to get their act together, had to learn to coordinate their interests, their defenses, if they were going to successfully meet the threat of French encroachments on their frontiers. And Franklin, about 6 weeks later, after publishing that cartoon, went to this intercolonial treaty conference that was going on in Albany and brought with him a plan of union for intercolonial union. He wanted to create an intercolonial government that would help prosecute this war against the French, also help coordinate the colonies' Indian affairs with Indian nations that inhabited their frontiers. And this became what was called the Albany Plan of Union. It was drafted by the delegates at that Congress in 1754. There was a tradition dating back to the 17th century of colonial governments sending delegates to Albany to treat with the 5 Iroquois nations, the League of the Iroquois as it was known, probably the most powerful Indian confederacy in the Northeast in the colonial era. And they would go up there to Albany periodically to negotiate these treaties, usually dealing with issues over the fur trade, issues of boundaries, but also trying to get the Iroquois to agree to alliance with them, especially against the French in Canada, where there's perennial warfare going on between the English and French colonies in North America. And so the fact that this was a meeting that involved not just these delegates from these different colonial governments, but also a very sizable number of Iroquois Indians who participated in the events that went on in Albany in 1754, gives it a very interesting multicultural flavor that, of course, we can appreciate today with our attention to diversity and multiculturalism in modern America. Having student research assistants is certainly very, very helpful. They've helped me in transcribing sources. They've helped me in compiling bibliographies for my work. One from a couple of years ago helped me by traveling down to the Library of Congress with me and going through some microfilm of newspapers from London in the 1760s. I was looking for references to Indians who had gone over and visited London in diplomatic embassies. And so she was very helpful in going through the same microfilm material that I was going through, trying to ferret out some of these instances when they were reported in the newspapers. I'm a father of 3 young children, so the notion of getting uninterrupted time to write is very hypothetical at this point. I tend to snatch the time when I can. I do a lot of my writing in my office right here on campus, especially in the summer months. I unfortunately don't go off to exotic locales, to find my inspiration writing, while ocean waves crash around me or eagles soar in the sky. Outside my window, I tend to be pretty much in the same place you'll find me in July that you'll find me in February or in October, which is in my office with a bunch of books piled up on my desk and notes scattered all around me. I find getting uninterrupted time, 4, 5, 6 hours at a time to write is very, very important to kind of cranking out that material. And it's a very, very slow process for me. Constant revision and rewriting before I get comfortable with sending something out to an outside reader or an editor or a publisher. I do think everyone needs to have some sense of history, be it their family history, their local history, the history of their nation. I think there is a certain level of cultural literacy that is based on history. I mean, everyone should have read the Declaration of Independence at some point in their lives if they're a citizen of the United States. They should have at least a vague familiarity with what the Bill of Rights is and how the Constitution was drafted and ratified, and some sense of the Civil War and so forth. Of course, that's all relative, and what I think is very important it will not be the same as what a historian of modern America perhaps thinks is very important, or a historian of medieval Europe. So there's a lot of give and take there. But I think anybody who has a sense of self, anybody with some degree of self-reflection and introspection, some type of history is going to factor into that. And it might be because you're the grandchild of immigrants, who came over in the early 20th century, or it might be because, you're proud of the fact that you had an ancestor on the Mayflower, or it might be because of the fact that you grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and have always identified with the story of the Pilgrims. Some element of your identity is historically based.